Kelly Starnes. I'm the co-founder of 3GStrong. 3GStrong is an online social and emotional resiliency solution. It's designed for schools, homeschool, and home. We include daily icebreakers, a lesson or story, all online. We have breathing activities, and our primary goal is to give students and their caregivers the secrets to success, the keys for self-improvement, and we focus those things under grit, growth mindset, and grace. We started 3GStrong because as a teacher of gifted students and my co-founder is a principal of an elementary school, we saw that there was a need for social emotional development in our students, that really growth mindset is at the basis of all learning. And we started looking for programs that we could purchase for our school. And what we found is that there was really nothing that met all the needs of what we wanted. It was either too much work for teachers who weren't trained counselors and didn't need to spend more time learning something that is now included in their job because social emotional learning is a state requirement in most states. And the curriculum that was out there, we found the ones that were easy for teachers were not engaging for students. And so Jamie, my co-founder, who was my principal at the time, we ended up being fast friends and started meeting after school and hanging out, and decided that we could create something better. And so having older kids, it allowed us the time to meet and do things. And so we started writing stories and activities that we felt like would be easy for teachers to present. We ended up hiring an illustrator to create the stories that we made, and we put them out there for teachers, and the teachers were so grateful and started telling us the changes they were seeing in their classroom. And we had started meeting after school because we really felt like this was something that we were pretty smart girls and pretty creative and knew the industry of education and felt like we could create something. And so we did this at the beginning, kind of with that in the back of our head that eventually we would sell this. We didn't know it would come to play as fast as it did. The after school care program at our school actually started asking about it. The director over Texas came to us and said, we hear that 3GStrong is really changing our kids in the after school care program, that we're having less behaviors, that kids are talking about treating each other with grace and how they can try again because they have a growth mindset and grit, and using the vocabulary that we had been using. And teachers kept telling us we should sell it. And then the after school care program actually came to us and said, can we use it? And we were like, okay, so what do? We went and we pitched to them and they were sold. They're like, oh yes, we want it in 3 schools right now. And they said, we'd love to introduce you to our national headquarters, but you're gonna need an app because they don't want something with a download and all of this. And so we were like, okay. So I reached out to some parents of former students who I knew were in that industry who could build apps. And we actually went and met with one. And when we sat down with him, he said, oh, I thought you knew that I was an angel investor. I thought you were coming to ask me for money. And I was like, no, we actually came to see if we could hire you to build an app for us. And he said, I'll build you an app this weekend, but you have something here. And I feel like you need to take on some investors and really make this a business. And we were like, we had not thought that far ahead. We didn't realize it. And so when he suggested that, we were like, no, we're not really interested in that. Thank you. And I kind of thought, oh, that'd be weird because he was one of my parents and before. And he emailed a week later and he said, I know that you guys don't think you want to take on investors right now, but you really have something. And he said, I know you. And his next door neighbor, I also taught his child before. And he said, we know you and we would put money in there. And he said, so think about it. And he said, but if you don't want to do that, one thing I suggest you do is you enter this contest. And he sent me the link for Code Launch. At first I was kind of like, oh, whatever. And then we ended up entering Code Launch and getting all excited about it and realizing that we actually really do have something. And then winning Code Launch and beating out 120 companies really proved to us that this is not just something that we feel like is needed, but it's actually something that people are asking us for, people are willing to invest in, and we'll take it a step farther. So here we are a few years later. Jamie and I became partners after she came in my classroom and saw that I was teaching something that was at the forefront of her mind as far as what should be happening in a school. And she and I sat down and really talked about what our beliefs were. And we connected on the fact that we're two moms with older kids and the things that we feel that they got out of school, but the things that really mattered going on from there, we felt boiled down to the 3Gs, the grit, the growth mindset, and the grace as far as life skills. And we were looking at what we do as educators and how we can make a difference. And that's really how we first connected on creating something. And at first, 3G, we just intended on doing it for our school and we were looking for other things. But when we started really creating our own program, we sat down and we looked at the things we want to teach. We realized that we're both working moms, and we kind of came to an agreement that we have to be almost like a married couple in the fact that when one of us has something going on, the other one has to pick up the slack. And we've been through that. Both of our kids have played high school sports. I had one that played college and I was out of town most of football season. And during that time, Jamie covered the things that I would normally do. And as a principal, she has seasons where it's super busy and I have to cover. We get along and we are friends. We don't necessarily hang out together in our free time all the time, but we have a great working relationship in the fact that we have the same goals, we have the same mission, we believe the same things, and we work together really well. I think part of that too is communication, and we've learned that along the way, just like you don't quit on your marriage when somebody's not hearing you. We've actually talked about it and worked through a lot of communication things, and we look at each other's strengths, and we've had to come out and say, okay, I don't feel strong at this, but I've noticed you're really good at that. Would you mind doing this particular thing, or would you mind taking over that? Because at first we were both trying to do everything, and that's not really doable in the grand scheme of things if you want to be good at what you're doing. For new entrepreneurs, I have 3 pieces of advice. First, stay passionate. If you can always remember why you're doing it, you're going to be able to refocus and pivot and do all the things you need to. You have to remember that fail is a first attempt in learning, is what we tell kids in 3GStrong. It's just an acronym for first attempt in learning. Fail doesn't have to be the end unless you quit. And so that brings me to number 2, be flexible. Don't quit. Look at feedback as information. It's not a criticism, it's just feedback. And so if you have something happen like COVID, and now all of a sudden the curriculum that you planned doesn't work anymore, you have to change on a dime and be willing to do that. Listen to your customer base. They tell you what's working, what's not, and change it. Just because you wrote a business plan and this is how it was written doesn't mean that's how it's best to stay. So always listen to feedback, always look for feedback, and always be willing to change. And number 3, growth takes time. In the field of social emotional learning curriculums, sometimes we feel like David and Goliath, and we are David. But we know that we are supposed to do this. We know that this is our passion. This is what we feel like we're supposed to bring as a legacy to the world. And we know that eventually we will be a giant too, but growth takes time. And just like we teach kids in our curriculum, you start where you are and you build. You have to be flexible, and you have to grow, and you have to look for ways to change, and you have to be passionate about it. So passion, flexibility, and growth takes time.